All right, we're going to kick off the Budget Committee meeting number 1. You have the agenda in front of you. I'm going to make a slight change to it because I'm calling it to order, and then we will do the Pledge of Allegiance. So, please, flags right behind us. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which we stand, one nation, under God, indivisible, liberty and justice for all. All right, we've got 6, so we have a quorum. So first order of business is we are going to elect a budget committee chairperson, and then I'm going to hand them the reins. Do I have a nomination? There's a nomination for Bill. Do I have a second? And there's a second. Any discussion? Great. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All right. And Bill, you own the floor. You are the budget chairperson. I'm gonna be quiet now. The one on that has a little person on there.
Okay. So, thank you very much for the great honor. I've aspired to this most of my life and prepared, lots of education. So, anyway, I'm looking forward to having a great budget board meeting today, and I think everybody here takes our jobs seriously. So, my next thing, I think, is to elect a vice chair. Do I have a nomination for a vice chair?
I'll nominate Jennifer.
I'll second that.
We have a nomination on the floor to elect Jennifer as the vice chair. Is there any discussion?
Yeah, I won't have too many opportunities, but Jen's been a board chair for 3 terms since I've been on the board, and she has done an admirable job. So I think she will be great support to you, Bill.
Thanks.
Are there any other comments? Hearing none, I would entertain a vote by voice to elect Jennifer. All in favor, aye?
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, Jennifer is elected vice chair. So the next thing on the agenda would be the presentation of the budget message by our Superintendent Dave Valenzuela. Mr. Superintendent.
Thank you, Budget Chair Bill Ertel. I appreciate it. And thank you all for being here, and I will get us going. So, here we go. Dear Three Rivers School District Budget Committee members, TRSD School Board, and the entire TRSD community. As I reflect on my 9th year as Superintendent and Chief Financial Officer of the Three Rivers School District, I remain deeply proud of the work we are doing together on behalf of students. Each budget season presents its own set of challenges, and this year was no exception. But what continues to stand out is the unwavering commitment of our staff, school board, and community to do right by kids, even when the numbers are difficult. When we began the budgeting process for the 25-26 school year, we faced an initial gap of approximately $2.5 million in our general fund budget. With a $71.2 million budget overall, this was not an insignificant hurdle. And yet, through careful planning and collaborative problem solving with our incredible business office and amazing account manager, Megan Beck, we were able to produce a balanced budget that protects our core programs and continues to move our mission forward. Pat's over here. In the Three Rivers School District, we will ensure high levels of learning for all students. In years past, districts across the state have balanced budget by cutting school days, furloughing staff, or eliminating vital programs. I am proud to say that in TRSD, we stayed true to our values and avoided those options. Instead, we focused on strategic reductions that would allow us to keep our mission at the center of every decision. We eliminated vacant positions through attrition, reduced discretionary budgets in many departments by 10%, deferred select maintenance and facilities projects, and adjusted our administrative employment contract, all without impacting the people and programs that directly support student learning. As always, our approach to the budget is guided by the TRSD core values, values that reflect our identity as a district and our belief in what students deserve. Student success and life-ready learning remain at the center. Every student should leave our system with the knowledge and skills and character to navigate the world with confidence, whether their path leads to college, career, trades, or service. A culture of care for both students and staff is foundational. From the classroom to the bus stop, we believe that people learn and grow best in environments where they feel valued, safe, and supported. Family involvement and community-centered schools are critical to student achievement. Our schools are not just buildings, they are community hubs where partnership and purpose intersect. And above all, school safety and security continue to be a top priority. Our investments in this area are ongoing, ensuring that students and staff alike have a secure place to learn and work. This budget sustains the critical work we've been doing across the district to build a coherent, responsive, and rigorous instructional system. We remain fully committed to our identity as a professional learning community, or PLC district, where teams of educators work together to answer 4 essential questions. What do we want our students to learn? How will we know if they've learned it? What will we do for our students that haven't learned it yet? And what will we do for those who already have? These questions aren't theoretical. They're happening every week in every school across our system, and they are producing real results for kids. Despite financial constraints, we are still moving forward with key academic investments. Most notably, this budget includes the adoption of a new English language arts curriculum in grades 6 through 8 and grades 9 through 12. This is a significant step forward in ensuring that all students have access to high-quality instructional materials that are aligned with state standards and reflect our commitment to equity and excellence. Our team continues to approach this work with professionalism, heart, and a relentless focus on student achievement. Whether it's our custodial and maintenance crews ensuring that our facilities are clean and safe, our teachers and classified staff building strong relationships with students, or our school leaders guiding instructional improvement, everyone in TRSD plays a role in delivering on our mission. At the end of the day, a school district budget is more than a financial document. It is a reflection of priorities, values, and vision. In TRSD, it reflects who we are, a student-centered, community-focused district that believes in the potential of every learner. Thank you for your continued partnership, for your trust, and for your belief in the students and staff of Three Rivers School District. With appreciation.
Thank you, Superintendent Valenzuela. I think the next thing on the agenda is the budget overview and information by Megan Beck. And welcome, Megan. This is your first session with us, right?
It is. Thanks, Bill.
Great.
So first thing we want to cover is the responsibilities for our budget committee. You've received the proposed budget. It was emailed to you along with a snail mail copy last week. We're going to review the document, discuss it, and provide feedback. You're also responsible for ensuring that the proposed budget, it meets the state standards, and it is also in line with the director's budget parameters. And then we'll accept some public comment. We did have a couple of questions that were submitted prior to the meeting, so we'll cover those. Otherwise, I didn't receive any. Did you receive any? I did not. Okay, so no other public comment was received for the meeting. And then we can, you guys can approve the budget, proposed budget, with or without changes. So first I want to discuss the process for us to develop our budget. We take into account the revenues that are allocated to us And we do a roll-up, and that roll-up includes steps and COLAs for salaries, and it also includes operational costs. So what are those operational costs for such the contracted services, such as transportation, those kinds of things. Once we do that, we evaluate where we're at, and unfortunately, when we came to the table, we did the roll-up in the revenues, we were around $2.5 million short. And so we had to be very specific on, how we wanted to approach these reductions and what reductions we wanted to use. Making sure that the reductions that we did do were least impactful to students. So in our discussions, our mission was our top priority. We will ensure high levels of learning for all students. Based on that mission, we have a foundation of our core values that provide us to get to that place to provide that high level of learning for all students. And I just want to cover each one of those core values just a little bit so you get an idea of the funds and how they are supporting this foundation for us. The first core value, student success and life-ready learners. I'm not going to read all of those to you guys. I do want to point out, though, that one of our priorities was to make sure that we had target classroom size staffing. So 54% of the general fund is specific in-classroom instruction, meaning that's your teachers, that's your education assistants that are in the classroom supporting our students. The next one is our culture of care. So a big one here is for administrative professional development. That's providing that training that our teachers and our support staff need in order to support our students at every level in the district. Another one of our core values is family involvement in community-centered schools. This is really important to us, and we try to make every effort to reach out to our communities and involve our families. One of the new ones on there is the community forums that Pat has started with board members being there and being able to have a candid discussion with the community members at those meetings, along with our superintendent, and our board secretary is also at those. And then our school safety and security. Currently in our budget, we have budgeted for one resource officer, and that's Robbie, and he does an amazing job having to get out to all points of our district. So we were able to bring that back into our general fund, so we're happy that we're able to support that right now. So the budget assumptions, as of the time that this budget was created, that they just came out with a new forecast, if you didn't know today. But at the time, it was $11.3 billion for the state school fund. That's across the state for K through 12. This is the first, 25-26 will be the first year of the biennium, meaning of that state school fund, we receive 49% the first year, and in the second year, we'll receive 51%. Local revenues, so local revenues would be our local property taxes. I have them estimated right now at around 23 million, which is about $1.5 million more than what we received this year, or anticipating to receive for this year. There's a small decrease in our special revenues, and that's according to those current estimates and allocations that we've received from the state. And the other one is our PERS cost. We know our PERS cost is increasing for the 25, 27 period, but we did, I'm going to talk a little bit more about it here because it was one of the questions that came up. We will have a little bit of savings in comparison to that presentation I gave you back in January. So the shortfall, this is some contributing factors, like it says, as to why we were falling short on our roll-up costs. The limited funding from the state school fund, the less on the special revenues, the rising costs we have, the PERS, the inflation itself on different contracts that we have throughout the district, and then our declining enrollment. It has stabilized over, I say, the last 2 years, but we still haven't got back to our pre-COVID numbers, or even close. I believe we're right around 300 less than what we were pre-COVID. I don't know if you guys can see that or not, but you can see the history there of the enrollment. And we depend on our enrollment. That's how we get paid through the state school fund. The lower the numbers, the less money that we're receiving through the state. And you know, for our district, it's really hard for us to make reductions just because of our geography. So we want to keep the numbers where they're at for sure, if not bring them up some. This is a little bit like what Dave talked about on our strategic reductions. Discretionary, department discretionary is what I should say, 10%. Maintenance, so we had a couple of projects that we were able to put off for a year. Administrative employment contracts, so that was a reduction within the admin contract that was agreed upon. There was 5.2 FTE that we were able to reduce due to vacant positions or attrition, and 0.5 FTE was moved over to grant funding. This is the general fund. We have state revenues and local revenues. You can see that those are the biggest pieces of the pie. State revenues, that's our state school fund. The local revenues, that's our property taxes. We have a large beginning balance this next year, which is helping us tremendously. So the whole general fund is that $71.2 million that we're working off of. Our expenditures have to equal our revenues. And again, the salaries and the employee benefits, those are a huge part of our budget. They make up 68% of our budget. The purchase services, those are things such as transportation, custodial contract that we have, those types of things. And then there's a few little ones, the reserve and contingency, that's money that we will not touch unless we absolutely had to this next year. That would be our beginning fund balance for the following year for 26, 27. And as you can tell, that's a big difference than what you saw on the previous slide, what we're starting off the year with. That's also part of where we were able to save. We reduced that down in order to get our budget balanced. Got to get to my notes, sorry. All right, so we have the special revenue funds. That contains several different ones. It has our title funds in there, the Stronger Connections Grant, the SIA account, High School Success, all of those numbers are what, at that time, were currently allocated to us, and they could change, and they probably will change. Debt service fund, the full faith credit, that $145,000 a year is the payment on our Ivy roof. The PERS debt service, that's for our side account, our bond that we took out in 2004. Capital projects, the capital grants, well, the capital projects are for small maintenance projects that we have around the district, repairs, those kinds of things. Capital grants, those are our seismic funds, which we just completed Evergreen this last year. We got a grant at the beginning of 24-25 for Fort Vanoy, and we just recently got word that we also will receive a seismic grant for Lincoln Savage Middle School. So it's awesome, and we will continue to apply for those every year. The self-insurance, that is what we use to pay our unemployment, our high-cost deductibles for our liability insurance. The internal service, that is a fund that we are able to apply a rate or a administrative fee to certain grants. Currently, it's 3.74%, I think, that we can apply to certain grants to help administer those grants. So we do use that on every grant that we're able to apply that to. And then we have the trust and agency. There's a few scholarships that are just still hanging around that the donors requested that the district oversee those funds and distribute those. So future budget assumptions. We know that our PERS costs are going to go up, and a couple things on that. Currently, the PERS increase for next year is set at 20.65% for Tier 1, Tier 2, and at 17.47% for OPSRP. Those rates that we're receiving, there was a Senate bill that went through, Senate Bill 849, that was just signed, I believe, by the governor, and it's up, I think it was 167 million that was part of a fund, and I'll tell you, it was the school district's unfunded liability fund. Say that 3 times. And that fund is, they're able to put that money back out to all of the districts across the state, and it gives each district a reduction of 1.68% on their current rates for this 25-27 year. Salaries and bargaining, those are going to continue to go up. The increased unfunded state mandates, those continue to happen for us. So here's some questions that we received prior to the meeting. Talking about the PERS, so what steps in the district are taking to manage these rising costs? So originally we had great intentions, I had great intentions, that we were going to increase that percentage that we apply to our salaries and create a savings account, if you will, to help pay for that cost. It's because we know it's going up and we're going to have additional funds that we need to have there. Unfortunately, it was one of the first things that we were able to reduce in order to get our budget to zero, in order to balance. So the difference that we'll be receiving from that Senate bill it's gonna be around $500,000, so it'll be a great start for us to start saving, because we will maintain the percentage that we're applying right now to those salaries. Especially. So the next one, can you share what steps the district is taking, especially in this budget, to help bring more students into our schools and keep the ones we have? Dave, would you happen to?
I might happen to know something about
Okay.
that. So one of the things about our decline enrollment, you saw the graph that we had up there, so pre-COVID numbers, we have never recovered. And so one of the assumptions that districts across the state made was that when the pandemic was over, students would just return to school. But during that time, a lot of options were created across the state. So now students can choose to take different pathways to fulfill their educational needs. A myriad of online programs exist across the state, so students have a very wide range of choices when they're making those. So it's upon, it falls upon the school district to make the Three Rivers the best choice available. And that's something that we're really invested in doing. And one of the things that I'm keenly interested in doing is making sure that the students we have, we retain. So if they're here, how are we meeting their needs to a degree where there is no other choice for them? This is where they want to be. That's through increasing our middle school electives and opportunities for students to thrive, ensuring that in kindergarten through 5th grade that students are finding academic success, because the more success they have in school, the less likely they are to not continue with school. That's one of the biggest indicators is early literacy. When that is lost, that is a big indicator for our students to find other things to do other than school. And then high school, the same thing. So finding increase in our CTE offerings, increase in our AP offerings, increasing college credit opportunities for our students. So that keeps students here. But there's a lot of students in Josephine County that are not accessing public school in any form. Online schools, Three Rivers, anything. They're doing homeschool, they're doing co-ops and those kind of things. And so one of the things that we're trying to do is, I guess the old thought pattern was, we have our school, come to it. You'll fit in. Change whatever you need to do to fit into our school. We are now of the mindset where we need to change our school setup to fit the various needs of our community. So that's something we're exploring. We're looking into a variety of avenues where we can be flexible as a school district to meet the different educational wants and desires of our community. Recently, in recent years, we had a charter school. It was actually SOSA, Southern Oregon Success Academy, was a charter for a number of years. We brought that school back into the district, so it's now a regular district school for a number of reasons. But there are concepts that we're working with right now, and we may be even coming to the board as early as June with, to create another type of charter that allows us to bring students in and serve them in the same way that Baker Webb Academy or SIO or any of these large online providers are serving students that live right here in Josephine County. And I think Three Rivers should serve students that are right here in Josephine County. So we have become more flexible in our mindset, and we're going to do whatever we can to provide outreach to those families. And we have to do that in a lot of different ways. It's not going to be a one-size-fits-all program, and so we're gearing up for that. So that should bring more students into our system and allow us a little bit more flexibility for the students that we have in terms of retention, too. So it's pretty much one of the biggest focuses we have, because a steady enrollment equals a steady budget, and that's not lost on us.
Thank you.
So can we ask a question on that? That's intriguing, what you were talking about, expanding sort of what the student's looking for when they come in the door. Will this be like all grades, or is your thinking on elementary or high school, or?
Focusing on kindergarten through 8th, but then it would eventually be all grades for sure. Yeah.
Okay.
Because right now we do a pretty good job for high school in providing online, partially online, or all, in class. That 6th through 8th, or that kindergarten through 8th grade is a gap for us. And there's a lot of students in that gap, so that's where we would focus, because that's where we believe the most students are right now. But sure, we would focus on a K-12 solution there.
So this is a budget committee meeting. Somewhere buried in these numbers, you'll have the money or the resources to implement these kind of programs, because surely it would cost money to do more different things at the same time.
Well, initially, right off the bat, it might not, because if we run our own charter school, we could utilize the resources that are available to us.
Okay.
And so we wouldn't have to put, capital outlay, we wouldn't have to hire new people, we would just allocate some of those resources. Now, once revenue was generated from the increased enrollment, then we would start to identify streams of resources streams of revenue to apply to that, to expand it even further, if that's what the data was showing us, that there is room for expansion. But no, it wouldn't cost much. It would just be a redirection of some of the resources we have.
I like that answer.
I like it too.
And, of the kids in the district that are K through,
Getting picked up.
K through 12 age, do we know how many are being homeschooled and how many others are, roughly, or?
We have a registry of homeschool students, and I think the last time that my colleague Stephanie Allen Hart checked, it was 350 students that were registered.
Wow.
So Josephine County residents, 350. And that's the registered ones. So there's a population of homeschool students that aren't
They're not
registered either, too. And they make those choices for a reason. And I want to honor, that family's
Sure.
choice for doing that, so we need to meet them where they
Well, we
are.
reach out to them to offer service or possibility.
We will.
How about a bonus or something? Are there state laws requiring folks to have their kids in an educational program?
There's compulsory education laws, yep, and so they get around it by saying, they don't get around it, I'm not gonna say that. They fulfill that need through their own homeschool programming and
Nice.
providing evidence that that's happening.
Okay. And do we provide classrooms or space for them to come and use?
Not yet,
No.
but that's on the table, Kevin, for
Okay.
sure.
Yeah, okay.
So on these 300 and some kids that are homeschooled, would there be more like in Illinois Valley than North Valley? Is there a regional scattered
I don't know if we have that information.
propensity?
Pretty scattered.
Give their addresses for the most part, and it is pretty scattered, and I think to hit Dave's point again, there's nothing that a parent does not, there's not the homeschool police, right? A parent can register their student with SOSD, and for me in special ed, that means that we can provide special ed services if they've done that. We also, if we know that they're registered, can open up our schools for that family of, you want to join PE class, you want to do different activities, electives, but if a family is not wanting any connection to their local school, then they don't have to register. So, there's, like Dave was saying, we know of those 350. It was about 500 during COVID, and before COVID, it was under 100. So, we've seen kind of that climb and dip like Dave was talking about, but there's certainly obviously lots of families that I can just speak. Bill will talk about Pacifica. They're doing Monday school and Friday school.
Sure, yeah.
They got 40-50 kids every time they're there, and those are anybody can come for that. And so just looking at those kinds of ideas that are drawing in a little different population, but also allowing us to support a family that might want something a little different than what we currently have.
Yeah. I see pods, I call them pods of kids out there frequently now, 2 or 3 days a week. Homeschooling, I'm sure you guys are attuned to this, but it seems if I was homeschooling, I still might want to avail my student of coming to one of your trade schools. I can't teach them welding at home, but maybe they could come. Is that on the table, or?
Absolutely, it would be. Yeah, and that would be part of that outreach, right? So honoring every student, every family's value sets in our community, but making all those things available, those high interest things that are hard to do at home. Yeah, I think
So, question, Dave, how many students do we have today in the district?
Just over 4,000.
Because the state of Oregon says we have 4,361. Does
Well,
that sound,
that includes some of our charter schools as
so
well.
that includes the charter
Yeah.
schools?
Mhm.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
I
So
think,
we have 3.
I like to drill down on this reason why people don't go to the public schools is possibly for what they teach.
Possibly, but that's
Yeah.
conjecture, so we don't know. So
Well, I
we'll
know.
find out.
I
Well,
know.
maybe.
Well,
Yeah.
we
We
do-
still have 4,000 kids, so.
Yeah, and we
Right.
do gather that information, it is part of the parents will write down, there's a line there for them to fill out their why. And so it's a lot of, a variety of reasons, for sure.
Do we have money to directly solicit these parents? Do we call them, invite them back? Do we have somebody working on that? Because we lose people, we essentially, in the broad sense of the term, have to advertise to bring them back. Do we have anybody specifically working on this, or do we want to do that?
We have a number of people that work on the retention part. So when a student puts in for a transfer to an online academy that's not ours, we have an outreach process that goes through where we're calling them and saying, hey, we offer a similar online program here in Three Rivers, and we describe it to them and try to get them to stay with us in that regard. But no, what we're talking about in terms of going after, I don't say going after, but going out and having conversations with the 350 families that are registered, let's say, that is something we're trying to develop. And so we don't have a budget for advertising right now, but we do have resources in district to try to figure out, if I go to the Saturday market and I set up a booth and I want to talk to any homeschool family that is willing to talk to me, what would it take to get you there? So we're trying to figure out, like, and that's just a hypothetical, don't look for me at the Saturday market, but we're trying to explore those kind of opportunities.
One possibility might be persons can contribute to an advertising fund.
We can talk about that for sure. I think that'd be
Yes.
great. Yeah.
Yeah, okay, and we need to know how much it would cost to get a viable advertising program out there and see if we can raise the funds separately.
Yeah. We can have Stephen Winters, our communications coordinator. You know him as Red Glasses.
Mr. Red Glasses, yes.
I'll work with him and we'll try to figure something out like that.
Very good, thank you.
You bet.
I want to add on a little bit to what Pat and Rick were talking about. You see the ads now that are out there for specific schools in Medford School District advertising, come to our school and stuff like that. So the issue's not just Three Rivers, it's really statewide. Enrollment's down across the 30,000 students across the state. So meeting the needs or finding the programs that'll support these families is critically important. But yeah, the advertising part is, you'll see the ads every once in a while on TV.
We have to figure out, we have inter-school transfers. Every student is up for grabs theoretically. And if we can concentrate on those within our district and the nearby districts, maybe we can benefit or get the jump on them not to be evil. Never evil.
Dave, we do collect, as Dave was saying, all of the information that we can reach those families on as to the why around online, and above and beyond the why is that flexibility. If parents that are leaving our district are saying what they're looking for is a more flexible schooling model, which obviously online can provide. And so I'm really hopeful with that, because that is, that kind of is very attainable, right? If we're able to move to an online school, then that flexibility is very inherent in that kind of program. So
Didn't we learn that online learning doesn't work during COVID? We learned it all across the country. Just doesn't work. Why pursue it?
What do you mean it doesn't work?
Well, the science shows that the kids didn't learn anything sitting in front of a TV set.
Well, we're not talking about TV sets, we're talking about doing math on the computer and being engaged in another medium other than actually in person. I mean, what's your basis for saying it didn't work? How do you
Well,
know
I can
that?
show you the statistics are quite evident
I'd
that
like to see those.
during COVID, the kids were home and they went, well, it's all over the documentation here. We haven't recovered from COVID because we weren't in the classroom. We were sitting at home, not learning. Does that explain?
Okay, I'm going to move on to the next question. Thank you very much. It says, can you explain how the capital projects fund is utilized to address the critical facility needs identified in the facilities assessment report? What I can tell you is a few of those funds. So we utilize the SB 1149 dollars. Those are, it's a Senate bill that was passed that provides us with energy rebates. Thank you. And we also work with Energy Trust of Oregon. And currently, we just finished up a project with Fruitdale for HVAC control upgrades. And those funds, now, the rebates that we will receive for that, we will then put forward to Fort Vanoy HVAC control upgrades as well.
What about the roof at
Did I say that right?
You said it right.
Okay, thank you. What was that, Kevin?
The roof at Fleming, wasn't that an issue out there?
Well, there was a seismic project at Fleming, so it impacted the gym.
Right.
So that gym roof is new, and then all the, there's a really large network of overhang eaves
So that
that
all
leaked.
got done?
That all got done through
Oh,
a
good.
seismic grant, and so
Okay.
one of the things that we try to address with these capital project issues is we're super aggressive with any kind of funding out there, like the seismic grant is one that we go for every year, and we've been incredibly fortunate to receive one every year. So we have had seismic investments at Applegate School, Illinois Valley, Hidden Valley, Fleming, Evergreen, currently underway at Fort Vanoy, awarded to Lincoln Savage. Now, these grants are $2.5 million grants that create a seismically sound building. Now, and I believe part of the state's motivation here is in the event of an earthquake, we have identified buildings that will withstand that and can serve as, emergency centers and those kind of things. And so that's a benefit, but the benefit to the district is we get new roofs, often a lot of new equipment, and those kind of associated upgrades with those grants. So we chase those quite a bit. The truth of the matter is, the capital projects fund is inadequate to address the needs of the district. Every year, we defer large amounts of repairs. Roofs is the clearest one that we have. And so, we have 20-year roofs that are sitting at 35 years of service, and we're crossing our fingers. We're doing everything else we can. We borrowed money that you saw in the budget where we're paying $145,000 for the next 8 years now on Illinois Valley High School's roof. And when we pay that off, we might do it again if we can't pass a local bond. And so that's the sad truth of it is that we're addressing the critical needs. So a door doesn't work, or an emergency exit is not adequate. We fix those things. We have money to do that. But these buildings are old. I mean, we're in an old elementary school right now in the cafeteria. And that's just a fact. And so we're trying to mitigate that, but it will take some local support to do that in the future.
So would we, at page 37, is this where we talk about real numbers that are related to this capital project fund?
Page 37, Bill, is that what you're talking about? The capital grants, that's seismic, yes.
So is it this program?
Yes.
Yeah, the seismic program, correct.
So we're talking about spending 1.89 million this next year on that.
So you're on capital projects, so you're on page 36. Those are what we use for maintenance and repairs.
37.
37.
He's-
Are you looking at the expenditures, or you're looking at expenditures on top?
Yeah, so. Yeah, so
Oh,
Bill,
400, sorry.
what that means is it put it into perspective. We had a $2.5 million grant at Evergreen Elementary School last summer.
Yeah.
And that, seismically retrofitted the gym and put a new roof and some other significant upgrades there, but that was $2.5 million for one small part of a school. This is 1.891 for the entire district. So we have that much money allocated to fix the leaks as they come in, essentially,
And the next
in the next year.
year.
That's the proposal.
That's the number, yeah.
So I think that puts it into
And it's not
perspective.
enough.
But under your line items, that you're talking about operations, building upkeep, vehicle operation.
So that fund also is what we use to maintain our treatment centers, our water treatment centers out at Fleming and North Valley as well.
And, yeah, it's no small thing.
And that's not enough.
Well, we hope it is for next year.
So are there some like big things out there that we can't do that you would think?
Well, I mean, like,
Roofs or
yeah, I guess, to be like really
would be
blunt,
the
would be
big,
the roofs.
Okay.
Obviously are a huge thing that we've identified as being able to preserve the assets that we have. So we want these buildings to
sure.
be around for another 50 years. And I believe the best way to do that is to fix the roofs first, but we also have a lot of domestic water supply and distribution issues.
So when I was doing that mini tour with you at one of the elementary schools, we had a major failure with the septic
Correct.
systems. So that would fall into this. This is where you go get the money to fix that problem.
Yes,
And it was a lot of money, right?
yes.
And so-
Yeah.
So, thinking next year, at any facility, we could have a catastrophe like that, it would use up a quarter of your budget, right?
We don't typically
Unplanned.
talk like that, Bill, but yes, that's true.
I'm fine there.
Look at Medford.
You're kind of like talking to my kids.
No, I know what you mean, but no, that's,
Fixing
yeah,
their car.
that's exactly the way to look at it,
No, I'm
Bill.
just trying to get a focus
It's true.
in my mind here, so, okay.
Yeah, for instance,
Thank you.
the Madrona septic system is gonna be north of $500,000 to repair. So if we were to put that catastrophe in this budget, then you would see we would have 1.3 left to deal with the rest of the district. And so, with 14 sites that have students in them, a lot of things could happen.
Okay, so moving on to the next one, can you elaborate on which state mandates are under/unfunded and what financial constraints that puts on the general fund dollars? So I know there's quite a few out there of those what we call unfunded mandates. One of them being the unemployment. That is something that, we are required by law to do. And we are self-insured, so that means that it comes out of our self-insurance fund. So we have to budget for that. Another one is such as there's a sped stipend that's being paid this month. Again, that was something that we could apply for, and it was advised that we do apply. We never want to turn down funds, especially for our sped staff. So the money it's a grant coming from the state. Unfortunately, it does not cover the employer costs of those stipends. So those are the kinds of things. Do you have anything you want to add to that, Dave?
Sure. We have a number of existing unfunded mandates, so we're mandated to provide a talented and gifted program across the district, and that does not come with any funding. We are about 8% points over the special education cap, so we're reimbursed at 11%, and we're sitting around 19%. And so, I mean, and PE mandate that came through a few years ago, that was an unfunded mandate, so they require school districts to provide a minimum number of PE minutes at each level, and what that required us to do was to hire PE teachers at elementary and middle and increase those numbers so we could supply enough students with enough time. We've always had PE, but never to that level, and so we had to really up our FTE in that area. So it's another example of an unfunded mandate from the state. And there are a number of large ones and small ones, and they all add up.
Yeah, I'm going to add a big one to that too. So the state gives us money for transportation costs, but the rate that our district gets reimbursed for is 70%. So there's a 30% gap, and I think that comes up to like $1 point some odd million. Yeah, close to 2. So that's a big one that I mean, it's not going to change. I ran down that rabbit hole the first year I was on the budget committee, and was screaming bloody murder, and legislators thought, oh no, this is fair. So
Portland gets reimbursed 90% or something?
no, Portland gets reimbursed at 70% too, but the problem is that 70% covers well more. So they make a profit on their transportation costs because it's so small, or I mean, it's so self-contained. Grants Pass makes money on their transportation budget. We're a couple million short. So there's a sewer system. There's a HVAC repair at Lincoln Savage that needs to happen. I mean, these are things that would be nice to have, but I mean, when you're busing 9,000, 10,000 miles a day. And it's unfunded because it's mandated that we provide transportation to every single student. So that's what the challenges are.
All right, thank you, you guys. Last one here is understanding that insurance is a major cost in the budget. Can you speak to how the district is working with staff and other stakeholders to find ways to balance cost and coverage? And then a follow-up to that question, can you speak to what the most significant or prevalent insurance cost is for the district and what the factors are driving that cost? And I'm going to defer that to Casey, if you don't mind.
So for clarification, I'm not sure if we're talking about employee costs for our insurance contribution or the district's liability insurance. So I'll kind of explain a little bit of both. So the costs for our employees, the contribution for our employees' health benefits, that is something that would be negotiated in each one of our contracts. So for each of our 4 bargaining groups, they would have sort of their own contribution level that they would have bargained into that. We are part of a system called OEB, and so that's the Oregon Educators Benefits Board, and so that's the one that dictates what the cost increase is going to be each year and what plans are offered for our employees. So Senate Bill 1067 puts a cap on what that increase can be for our employees and for school districts to offer those plans. And so the maximum rate that they can increase is 3.4%. And so that's in our district, we have an option in each one of our bargaining groups for a fully funded health insurance plan. So medical, dental, vision, there's an option for our employees to have it fully funded. Might be a higher deductible, but there is an option for fully funded. If you would like a lower deductible, there's 7 different plans within OEB that an employee gets an opportunity to choose for. So that's on the employee side. As a district, we're part of what's called PACE. It's a statewide pool that we're a part of that PACE is able to negotiate a lower rate for us as a district for our liability insurance. And so those rates do increase. It depends on what we're looking at. One of the areas, thinking about what's an area that's increasing the most, I would say our cybersecurity. There's a lot of districts around the state. There's a lot of public entities that have been hit. And that's an area that the cost is significant when you're trying to, when you have a data breach. And so when those types of things happen, it increases the cost for everybody across the pool and everybody across I would say across the state. And so we try to do things with PACE. There are things that we can do to mitigate some of those increases. They have like best practices, and if we can show that we are doing those best practices, like educating our staff, we spend a lot of time, Marcel out of my office spends a lot of time with wellness updates or getting staff to do things that try to create healthy lifestyles. That things like that will help lower the usage rate for our insurance, which then lowers the rate for us as a district. And so we try to find out any way possible to kind of reduce that increase. And typically PACE, they'll offer a 5% discount if you check all these boxes, and it's educating your staff on how to interact with students, depending on what they're sometimes it's the sex abuse. That's one that's very costly for school districts across the state, and every other insurer. And so the more education we can do with our staff, the lower our rate can be, because we're less likely to have an occurrence in the insurer's eyes. Yes?
So actually, drifting into a topic, how well protected is our system from a cyber attack? And is there money in here to safeguard that or harden it or what?
Yeah, so we actually have coverage. We have an insurance coverage up to a certain dollar figure, and as far as the protection piece, I'll let Dave talk about that. There's a couple, or Rob, if you want to talk about the cybersecurity measures that we have in place. That, sure. Yeah.
So we rely on the ESD for quite a bit of support with technology services. One thing in particular that we take advantage of is a regional data center. So we leverage their resources and their data center to keep our data safe. They have some specialists in the area of cybersecurity that keep tabs on our data, have backups. We've continued to use a product named Adlumin, and that monitors all of our systems. So whether it's our mail systems, it's our files that we have stored in the cloud, we will get, for example, we got to log in for an account in the Ukraine. Well, that's a problem, right? So we can get notified when these odd things happen. I think it's been 2 years now, we set up two-factor authentication. So if a staff member logs into a different device somewhere, it will prompt them on like their cell phone and say, is this you? you know, and then they type a code in and so forth. So we've continued to do some training with our staff. So every start of school year, there's a few little trainings that because to be honest, bottom line, it comes down to a lot. The tech nerds, they have to do their part. I'll tell you that. You know, they got to take care of business and make sure things are secure. But there's a lot of issues that can come up on the end user level. There's a thing called phishing that you've probably heard of, and we've had some staff members unfortunately take the bait. And thankfully, because we had two-factor authentication set up, it wouldn't let those people log into their account. So I feel like we're in a pretty good place, especially with the ESD support. We have a person on staff, Pete Davalio, that does, he lives and breathes cybersecurity, and he keeps us on track with those things that we hate to do, like password changes. And so we recently had a password change not very long ago, but in the interest of security, we need to keep changing our passwords. So those are a few examples, just in terms of that side of things.
So
Things like that, yeah, things like that would earn us, so when we add in the two-factor authentication or the extra security, that earns us like a 5% discount with PACE. So there's things like that that are motivation and extra security added.
Thank you.
All right, moving on. So these are our next steps, discussion, which we're having, and questions and public comments. Approve the budget or schedule another meeting. The board can adopt the budget or adopt it as it is or with changes. The board adopts the budget on June 11th. My mistake, I'm sorry. The budget committee tonight would approve the budget. And then the new fiscal year begins July 1st. Before we start any discussions, I just want to let you guys watch a little video to remind you of why we do what we do here in the district. And thank you to everybody that helped me with the budget this year. It was definitely a group effort, a team effort, and couldn't have done it without all of you. So, thank you. And thanks to Stephen Winters for putting that together for me.
So looking at our agenda here, we've heard from Ms. Beck on the accounting manager. I guess now it's time for discussion and questions. I guess I would ask my fellow board members here, do you have any specific questions on items in the document here that we want to talk about?
Yeah.
Kevin?
Sorry. So on the educational school district, and then like Fund 217, which is one of my babies. 217, the Stronger Connections grant was authorized by the federal government to focus on mental health supports, safe and inclusive school climates, and address the needs of students. These grants that are coming through this educational school district from the feds, is that right? And, no,
You are correct in that Stronger Connections grant comes from the feds, but not through ESD.
oh, okay, they're coming
Yes.
from the feds.
Straight from the feds,
Okay.
correct.
So, with President Trump and his buddy Elon Musk making these cuts and destroying the Department of Education, is that impacting us?
That particular grant, possibly, we were notified that instead of having the deadline go until September 2026, that possibly the deadline would be September 2025. So we are scooching up all of our activities along with our charter schools and private schools. The money is still there. They haven't taken away the money. They just might shorten up the time frame. So we are going to use the money as quickly as we can so that if it got cut off on September 30th, we would have maximized every penny allotted to us.
Okay, what about the money for food? Because they're talking about cutting out the food stuff for kids.
I don't know about that
But
one.
we get that from the feds,
Well,
right? Isn't
the
there a
f-
federal
the fu-
program
The
that?
food bank would impact our ability to put together food boxes for our families,
But I mean our school lunches.
No school lunch.
yeah,
Yeah, the National School Lunch Program,
Right.
yes, definitely, it's funded through the federal government.
Okay, so that's possibly to be cut as well.
I haven't heard anything about that. We haven't heard anything at this time about any cuts to our food service program.
I'm just wondering if we can be a little proactive, maybe contact Cliff Bentz, our congressman from here, and kind of keep their feet to the fire as far as, you know, hey, these are not acceptable. I mean, to me, as a school supporter, I can't imagine why, I don't know why they want to cut these things, but.
We absolutely want to make sure that we're advocating for more funds.
Right, that's, okay,
Across the board,
okay.
yes.
We advocate for more funds, but there's no indication at all they wish to cut school funding for food. Prior to a Department of Education, that was handled through the Department of Agriculture, if I remember correctly. So if there is a cut to the Department of Education, it doesn't mean there's a cut to our food supply.
Okay,
So do not make assumptions that aren't necessarily there. We will
No,
have
I'm
to,
not. It's just-
now, the US government, now this is my problem, I'm in contact with every level of government in this county because of what I do. I'm city attorney for Cave Junction. I do work for the city of Grants Pass, and I communicate constantly with the county. Every layer of government is seeing cutbacks and probably will for the next 10 years because we have 34 trillion in debt accumulating. If you add the debt of states and you add the debts of districts, it's significantly higher. I think we have to all face the fact that for maybe 10 years, that we're all going to be looking at cuts almost every year from places we've never expected them, whether it's political, there is no money. I remember telling Pat Fahey, do you know Pat Fahey?
yeah,
Yeah, he's a friend of mine, and he's running for county commissioner. And I said, it's not going to be a good job because you're used to people liking you. And I said, for the next 4 years, it's the question of who gets cut and where and how much of basic functions we can preserve as government entities and as a civilization. And
no,
so,
nobody questions that. I mean,
So-
everybody
so
wants
do
to
not-
cut
do-
waste, fraud, and abuse, and nobody's assuming anything.
well, I
When
do
you
know.
talk about $50 million being cut out of a water waste treatment plant for Grants Pass that suddenly isn't there.
There's,
and yes, we
I
have-
am telling you this.
Could we talk about our budget, please?
Yeah, this
Okay,
is
but
quite a
what I'm
larger
telling you
discussion.
is
Get back on
that,
track.
that soon, every year, there will be less.
So Pat, we got it, okay?
Okay,
So I actually have a question on page 31. And line items 2550 and 2552. And it's talking about pupil transportation. And there's a line item called page 31, line,
Student transportation services.
yeah,
2552,
yeah, 255. What would a student transportation services, the numbers are moving dramatically from one time period to another. Is that cost to transport students or income?
No, those are on expenditures. So, and that's in our special revenue. And that would be transportation costs that are paid for, our SIA, are paying for sports transportation for after school.
So last year we budgeted 850,000, and this year we're budgeting 169,000.
It's a heck of a drop.
I can't tell you right off the top of
Okay.
my head what that is,
Okay, that's
Bill, I'm
fine.
sorry, but I can definitely look into it and get back to you.
That's okay. No, numbers chase numbers around, and probably, overall, the bottom line, that's unappropriated funds, so.
So if I had to summarize what this meeting meant was, we have less money than last year. We're quietly making cuts in places that cause the least damage to our students. And if we want to get out of this continual decline, the quickest and best way to get out is to have more students. Unless I've missed something. Okay, and we're trying not to hurt the kids with our cuts as best we can. So I think you've done a fine job with what we have, and I congratulate you for putting this together.
Thanks, Pat. It was definitely a team effort
Well,
all the way around. I put the numbers in and everything, but it was all of us working together to make sure that we're supporting our students.
Rick?
Just one,
We're going by
Good.
life.
okay,
Go-
okay.
going-
Just, oh,
Rick, you have a
excuse
question?
me.
Yeah,
Well,
go-
I have
You have the floor.
page 10, that's dangerous. Page 10 and page 11. That bullet on the left-hand side, special revenue funds are anticipated to decrease slightly. And I look over at page 11, slightly, $6 million? That's kind of an understatement, isn't it? I mean, that's a lot. Where it says special revenue and then it says a decrease?
That decrease, Rick, is from ESSER dollars that we received one time, and that's why it's showing such a dramatic decrease.
So that's all, it's all gone now?
Correct.
Basically. I notice on page 12, the last three budgets have contained the same sentence. Three Rivers School District is committing to ensuring that our third grade students are at or above benchmark in reading. And we have made progress. I see the latest state figures, we're at 35%, which is still below the abysmal 40% that the state's reading at. So I would hope, and I know they have a new program we bought for English for K through 5, and I'm hoping that would address the situation so we could at least get back up to the state level. And I notice there's some expenditures in there also. Also, I noticed on page 31 that youth corrections, I thought we were out of the OIA, and yet there's $176,000 put out for the line item is 1294 on page 31.
Page 31.
Yeah, are we still connected with the prison, or? I thought we were out of that. I know, Rich, you know something about that, and District 7 runs that, right?
Yeah, District 7 now has that, so
Yeah.
I'm not sure
That's,
exactly.
that's our school resource officer, Robbie Knising.
At 1294 on page 31?
Rick, I can get you a detail on that, and like I
Okay.
said, this is a roll-up of all of those special revenues, so I couldn't identify specifically
Gotcha,
right now to
gotcha.
what that was, but I'm
Yeah.
happy to get it to you.
Okay,
Okay.
thanks, I appreciate that.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and Rick, to your point, yeah, you see how, you can see where OYA dropped off there in 22, 23, and that's at 900, almost $1 million. And then they had some other special funds that came to them too that weren't reflected in the budget. But yeah, the 176, I would imagine that's for our resource officer.
Research,
And
okay.
we paid for that before out of ESSER, out of the ARPA money, and that's gone away.
Also,
so-
on the same page, 2130 Health Services, went from 195K to 0. Is that the school-based health clinic? Does anybody know?
What page were you on? I'm sorry, Rick.
Page 31 again,
31 on expense.
and line 2130, under Health Services, it went from 195 to 0.
We now pay for all of our district nurses out of the student investment account, and so it's paid for out of a grant, not out of the general fund.
Oh,
Those
gotcha.
are district nurses.
District
Okay,
nurses.
gotcha.
Thank you.
Are there any other questions from the
No,
budget
I mean, this
committee
is
board?
great discussion.
Great.
I think with the money that was available, you made good choices. And once again, I'm impressed by everybody, and thank you. Your entire team, where are they out there?
Yeah, we're all there.
Okay, so very good work. And as I said, unfortunately, we'll probably be here again, working even harder to achieve the same objective. So bless you all.
Okay. So any further questions from the board? I'd like to see now, is there any questions or comments from the public? Those of you in the audience, do you have any questions, concerns?
Those needed to be submitted prior to the meeting.
Beg pardon?
The public comment needed to be submitted prior to the meeting.
Oh,
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. You don't get the chance.
Follow the checklist, I get it.
Yeah, okay.
An Army guy.
So, hearing none, I would entertain a motion to approve this budget as presented today. I need a first.
So,
I'll make the motion.
real quick, on the back of your agenda, we need to specifically say, it's on the back of that agenda document, right there there you go. Down there at the bottom.
I move that the Three Rivers School District Budget Committee approve the proposed budget as presented.
I second.
Approve taxes for the 2025-26 fiscal at the rate of 3.7262 per thousand of assessed value for operating purposes.
You can say it now. You got your mic.
I second that. I'm so
So-
excited, thank you.
So we have a motion and a second to approve the budget per the wording. Any discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The budget is approved. Thank you very much.
And thank you, Budget Committee.
And I'll return the meeting to the chair.